Hello bookworms and welcome back to my channel. I made a top 10 video back when I first started this YouTube channel, coming up to 4 years ago now, and I think my taste has changed, not dramatically, but I have since read some books that have bumped other books off of that top 10 list. I also think I'm just a bit more aware of what my taste is now. Some of the books on that list I'd only read once, and I hadn't read them like recently, so I couldn't even remember why I liked them. So I just don't feel like that top 10 really represents my taste. That being said, I've decided to do an updated top 10, and as well as that, this video that you're currently watching, this is my top 10 standalone novels, and then I'm going to do another video that is my top 10 series, because I find it really hard to put like books within series within these like top 10s, because it feels like you should put the first book in the series, but then that might not necessarily be your favorite in the series, and it just gets complicated. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to make two separate lists. I'm going to have a top 10 standalone and I'm going to have a top 10 series. So some of the books that feature in my original top 10 video are books in series, so they don't feature in this one anymore, but they might feature in my top 10 series, so please come back and watch my top 10 series video when that is made. Now, I have read, according to Goodreads, over 400 books. This was quite a hard task to narrow it down to top 10, which is why I've decided to split it over two videos and do a top 10 standalone and a top 10 series. Also, there is no order to this. This is not like ranking 1 to 10 or 10 to 1. This is just 10 books that I bloody love in no particular order. The first book on my top 10 standalones of all time is Last Night by Vari McFarlane. Let me read the blurb for you. Eve, Justin, Susie and Ed have been friends since they were 18. Now they're in their 30s, the four are still close as ever. Thursday night pub quizzes are still sacred and Eve is still secretly in love with Ed. Maybe Eve should have moved on by now, but she can't stop thinking about what could have been, and she knows Ed sometimes thinks it too. Then one night, in an instant, all their lives are changed forever, and Eve discovers she isn't the only person keeping secrets. I read this book back in 2021 and I don't remember what drew me to this book. I don't remember why I decided to borrow it from the library, because I did. I borrowed it from a library as an ebook, which is quite a rare thing for me to do because I don't really like reading ebooks. But anyway, I borrowed it from my library as an ebook and I absolutely devoured it. It made me sob, it made me feel many things, and I just fell in love with her writing style, and ever since I have just been an absolute Vari McFarlane stan. But because this is the book that started it all, this is the book that makes it into my top 10. What I love about Vari McFarlane is the way she writes her characters, the way that she gives them so many nuances, the way she makes them feel so real, and the way that she does not follow the formula of romantic fiction, which is one of the things that really puts me off romantic fiction. Now don't get me wrong, I am a secret romantic at heart. I do love a good love story within other genres, so like within fantasy, within sci-fi. So I've never really been drawn to like romance as a genre. However, Vari McFarlane, I love her work, I love her books, and I just absolutely adored this book. I loved how it didn't go the way you expected it to, and I also loved how it explored friendship and like adult friendship, and also grief is a huge topic in this book. The next book is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. One of the most popular 20th century novels. To the Lighthouse is a story of a woman and her family experiencing the passage of time and seeking to recapture the meaning from the flux of things. And that is all I'm going to read of that, because it does contain a spoiler. And I was recommended this book when I did a short course in critical reading during lockdown. It's part of Oxford University's like extended education scheme. They do a lot of short courses, and because I didn't get the best education growing up and I wanted to go to uni and I wanted to just sort of like add to my skill set a little bit before I went to uni, so I decided to do this short course. And on that short course we did like a little bit of creative writing. The lecturer that was running the course said that I should read Virginia Woolf because my writing style was very similar sort of stream of consciousness, and I'd never heard of the term stream of consciousness before. The lecturer said, you should read To the Lighthouse, I think you would really like it, because at that point I'd not read a lot of classic novels and I wanted to sort of explore more. I was thinking of potentially studying English at university, so I picked it up and I absolutely fell in love with it. It's one of those books that's really hard to explain because set over 2 days, but also 10 years. It's really slow paced, yet it also goes really quickly. Like, it tells a story of 10 years in an instant almost. I just loved that contradiction within the writing. I also think it's honestly one of the most beautiful books that's ever been written. I loved how lost I got in this book, and it just manages to capture like nostalgia and heartbreak and loss so well. I just think this is honestly the most beautiful book of the 20th century. I really need to read more Virginia Woolf because this is the only book I have read by her so far, but it is one of my top 10. The next book is It Only Happens in the Movies by Holly Bourne. When Audrey meets Harry, it's the start of a truly cinematic romance. Or is it? Audrey knows that Harry is every movie cliche rolled into one, but she still chooses to let him into her heart. One of the same reasons that I love Varya McFarlane is why I love Holly Bourne, except Varya McFarlane writes adult fiction and Holly Bourne for the most part writes YA, and this is a YA. Holly Bourne captures people beautifully. She manages to create these characters that feel so real, so fleshed out, people I want to be friends with, people that I want to be like, you know what, you're like a little sister, I need to give you a hug. And this was one of those books where I almost felt a little bit protective over the main character, and like I just wanted to tell her that everything was going to be okay. You think this is going to be the classic YA romance of the bad boy, but it turns out the bad boy is not so bad in the end, except maybe he is still a piece of shit. Holly Bourne just captures how hard it is to be a teenager. Being a teenager sucks. Like, you can have the best circumstances around you, you can have the best family, the best friends, whatever. It still freaking sucks. Although, poor Audrey does not have the best family around her, I won't lie. Yeah, Holly Bourne tends to write adult characters, parent characters that aren't great. Same with her male characters, same with her like love interest boy characters. They're never very nice. Except in, I can't remember what it's called, it's the middle book of the Spencer Club series. She writes a green flag boy in that one. It was a really funny read as well as like heartbreaking at times, and I think Holly Bourne is the best of the best when it comes to writing teenage characters. The next one is also a YA. I do love me some YA, although I think this is the last YA on the list. And it's Trouble by Non Pratt. Yes, those are sperm on the cover. Hannah is smart and funny. She's also 15 and pregnant. Aaron is the new boy at school. He doesn't want to attract attention. So why does Aaron offer to pretend to be the dad of Hannah's unborn baby? This book is told in a dual perspective. It's told from both the perspective of Hannah and Aaron. I really enjoy books like that. I like getting to know characters through the eyes of both themselves and other people's perspectives, because I think it helps create a more rounded picture of like who they are. And I just think this is a really sweet story about two very young people being put in a situation that young people are not prepared to be in, and how these two sort of find friendship through this. And I just think it's a really beautiful book. And I met Non at an event a couple of years ago, and they were actually chairing the event. And I went on to them and I was like, this is going to sound really strange, but I absolutely adored your book, Trouble. Non signed a book plate for me to stick in my copy. So this is a very treasured copy. All the rest of these books are fantasies. We have The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. In the forest-filled pagan village, Eva Kay is the only woman without power, treated like an outcast due to her corrupted bloodline. So when soldiers arrive from the Holy Order of the Woodsman to claim a girl for the king's blood sacrifice, a VK is betrayed by her fellow villagers and surrendered. But basically, it's a journey novel where there are two opposite, bred to hate each other enemies that have to survive. Is good. I believe that the first time I made a top 10 video, I just finished reading this book, or I might have even still been in the middle of it, but I was like sure that it was still going to be a top 10, so I included it anyway. It was one of the first advanced reader copies or proofs that I ever received, and I instantly fell in love with it. I fell in love with Ava Reid's writing style. I fell in love with Eva Kay, the main character. I fell in love with Gaspar. I fell in love with the world. I absolutely adore just how raw and gross and grim some of the descriptions are in this book. You know, there's just some really grim imagery around like the monsters and the villain. I just love it. It's a standalone fantasy, and I think to build such a flushed out world in a standalone is an incredible feat, and the fact that this was Ava's debut novel still blows my mind. And I just think this is a perfect piece of fantasy fiction that should and most definitely will go down as a fantasy classic. Now the next one is a fantasy classic. It's The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. If you've been living under a rock, The Hobbit is about a hobbit, which is a little creature, little small sort of 3-foot humanoid creature that live in little nice and clean holes in the ground. They like to eat food and read books. No, I'm not describing myself. Bilbo Baggins, our main protagonist, finds himself on an adventure with a load of dwarves and a wizard. I can't not include this in this video. I know that some people might be like, but that's part of a series. Technically, it's not. It is a standalone. It's just part of the same world as The Lord of the Rings. And this was my introduction to Middle-earth. This was one of the first fantasy books I ever read. I had this on cassette as, I think, an 8-year-old, and I absolutely love this book, and I have done since my dad presented the cassette to me as an 8-year-old. I also reread it this year via the Andy Serkis audiobook, which I highly recommend. If you're not aware, Andy Serkis is the person that played Gollum in the movies, and he voices all of the characters like they sound in the movies. It's great. The next book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. France, 1714. A desperate woman makes a desperate deal in the dark, a bargain to live forever but to be remembered by none. So begins the invisible life of Addie LaRue. This is one that I read it 4 years ago maybe, and it still hasn't left me. I sobbed. I absolutely sobbed throughout the entire sort of last 50 pages of this book. It's beautiful. It's one of those books that really gets you thinking. It gets you asking the like deep questions. It also gets you asking the kind of silly questions because it has such a interesting like concept. Yeah, it hasn't left me. I've only read it once, and that's the effect that it's had on me, and I just feel like there's something magical about a book that does that, and it's very rare that a book does that, which is why this book is on my top 10 list. Circe by Madeline Miller. In the house of Helios, god of the sun, and mightiest of the Titans, a daughter is born, but Circe has neither the look nor the voice of divinity, and is scorned and rejected by her kin. Increasingly isolated, she turns to mortals for companionship, leading her to discover a power forbidden to the gods: witchcraft. Many of you will have heard of Madeline Miller, probably because of her book, The Song of Achilles. The Song of Achilles is a brilliant book. It's beautiful. There is no doubt in that. But you can't beat my gal Circe. Where do I start? I support women's rights. I support women's wrongs. My girl Circe, what can I say? I love her. I'm a Circe apologist through and through. It's why me and Rick Riordan have beef, because Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters did my gal dirty. It's everything you've come to expect from Madeline Miller. Beautiful writing, modern twist, a centered narrative around one character. I love it. Now these last two, if you followed me for a while, will be no surprise whatsoever. Firstly, we have The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This is the beautiful Fairy Loot edition, which I did speak about in a previous video, and these are the new designed covers. The Starless Sea is just the epitome of a love letter to storytelling. I don't know another book like it. There has been so many books that have said for fans of The Starless Sea, and whenever I read them, I'm like, I get where you're coming from, but no, it just isn't The Starless Sea, because there is nothing out there like this book. I can't even explain it. It's one of those books where it's like the plot just, I can't explain it. I haven't got the words. It's a feeling that you can't control. I have read this multiple times. I spot things new every single time. I could read this thousands of times and never get bored. And my final book in my top 10 standalones is my favourite book of all time, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Again, this is the beautiful Fairy Loot edition. I will not hear a single bad word about this book. It is just magic epitomised. You call it insta-love, I call it fated lovers. Also, the concept came from Erin Morgenstern reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, which is a 1,000-page long novel about two feuding magicians, which is iconic from the offset, but she decided instead of having two feuding magicians that know each other, she would have two feuding magicians that have no idea that the other exists, and that's how you get the Night Circus. This is one of those books where I don't want to explain it, I just want you to read it, because I went in blind 10 years ago and it was the best experience of my life, and I think you should do the same if you haven't already read it. This has been my favourite book for 10 years. I don't think anything will ever push it off the top spot. I think Erin Morgenstern is one of the best writers of the 21st century, and it's a shame that she's only written 2 books because I need more. I'm getting an itch to reread. I used to read this every year, literally without fail, and I haven't read it in like 2 years, so I need to get on that. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 standalones of all time. I like to think that I have quite a wide range of taste, but I think it's quite obvious that a lot of what I read is whimsical, stream of consciousness, slightly magical, beautiful writing, beautiful purple prose. What can I say? I'm a simple gal. But I think when you get to the point where you know your taste, it makes life so much easier, because it means that you don't have to faff around thinking, am I gonna like this? Because, you know, most of the time you know if you're gonna like it or not. And I love knowing my taste. And you know what? I think I have good taste. I won't lie to you. And if you're sat there thinking, where is Samantha Shannon? Because she only writes series, my love. She has not yet written a standalone. I know, obviously, Priory was originally a standalone, but it's no longer a standalone. It is now within a series. Unfortunately, they can't make it to this list because they're all part of series. That's a little teaser for what will probably be my next video, which is my top 10 series. I hope to see you back for that video. Let me know in the comments if you read any of my favourite books. I'd rather not know if you didn't like them. Also, let me know your favourite book in the comments so I can get to know you all a little bit better. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, then please thumbs up, subscribe, all those things. Thank you very much for watching. Happy reading.